Oh, I do have another request. I should have looked it up before I'm sorry. It's this little guy, he's a twin, and, he has cancer. And it's pretty devastating, on the family. I mean, you guys are very familiar. I think he's 5 or 6 years old, and they thought that he was gonna be fine, and they found out they're gonna have to do a 3rd round of chemo. And, just remember his family. I can't remember, Oliver is his name. Are they local? They are, live in, I wanna say Marietta. They went to Compton with us, which the school is right there in Powder Springs.
Last name is Oliver, his name?
No, his little boy's
His
name is
name.
Oliver. I was gonna screenshot it so I'd have it for prayer request, but anyway, remember Oliver.
I was just slowing down. I bet everybody's kind of the buck we've been in, just run. Just like take a deep breath. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for your continued goodness and mercy that just showers us, that overtakes us. Father, I thank you that even though so oftentimes we get in such a hurry and we get doing our thing and we get moving, that you will still us and stop us and you'll get our attention, Lord. And I thank you that you care enough and love us enough to do that. So Lord, we just still ourselves and stop in your presence right now. Though there are so many things we want to ask you about and talk to you about and lay before your feet, Father, we just want to thank you and praise you for who you are, for your mercy and goodness. And Lord, when we think about Aunt Betty and Uncle Gene and just the faithfulness, your faithfulness, Lord, that has just been mirrored through their lives and the way that they've been so faithful. But that faithfulness that they've demonstrated to so many people throughout their life and throughout their 62 years of marriage is a direct result of your faithfulness being shown to them early in their lives, and Lord, them saying yes to that and cooperating in your grace. And so, Lord, it's a point of celebration tonight. But Lord, at whatever point you call her to be with you, Lord, that in the moment she is absent here, Lord, she'll be right with you. And I'm so thankful for that, Lord. But Lord, we do ask you for the grace and strength for so many hearts that are going to be heavy, for Uncle Gene particularly, for the boys, but just for everybody, God, who's been impacted, and so many that have been impacted through their lives and their faithfulness. That Lord, you would just give grace and strength. And Lord, we know you're able to do all things, and so Lord, we just put it Eddie into your hands. And Lord, God, we just trust your timing. We trust the way you do what you do, and only you can do, Father. And we just declare our confidence in you, Lord, and our trust in you. We pray for Oliver, this special situation with this young man, Lord, that you would just move and work in the situation, that you would bring the miracle that you so long to bring, Lord, that you delight to do on behalf of your children. Lord, we hold up Miss Emmy and their family. Lord, we just continue, God, to hold up so many that we've been praying for physically, that there would just be healing and restoration in their bodies. Lord, we pray also for those who have just been mentally plagued by just a series of discouragements, who've just been beaten down, it appears, every which way they turn. But Lord, you would just remind them of your goodness and your mercy and your grace and your strength. Remind them, Lord, that you call us to be faithful even when it's difficult and hard. And Lord, that in those situations you call us to walk through, you will never leave and never forsake us, that you never walk away just to see how we respond. But Lord, you stand with us in the middle of it. And Lord, you give us grace and strength to respond rightly and to do the thing that you've asked of us even in this hard. So Lord, I thank you for that kind of tenacity and that kind of grace. I thank you for the seeds that were planted on Sunday and the time of fellowship, the time of prayer, the word that was declared. God, I thank you for the last many weeks that you've just been speaking and working and doing. And even though we label and we identify some things we see you doing, there's so many things we know you're up to. and you're doing beyond our ability to see. So Lord, just help us to cooperate. Help us to say yes to you and to do those things you put in our hands to do. I pray that you would give all of us as a church family, Lord, that you would just bind us together with cords that cannot be broken. And I pray, Father, when all of the winds assail and the things come, and it's so easy for misunderstandings and just little petty things to get in the way, that, Lord, you would just allow your Spirit to create a unity among us, the unity of the Spirit. Lord, that we would do our part to cultivate that and to stand in that. That we would be gracious and forgiving and loving and merciful. God, I pray for those that you're sending our way, those who even just a couple of weeks showed up and then again this week, for those that you're just sending our way. And in some of their lives, it's a moment of time for them to love on us and us to love on them right back. And others, there may be a season you're calling them into to be here and be a part of what you're wanting to do here. So Lord, we open our arms wide. Lord, we thank you for sending them and for the gifts and talents that Lord you placed in them. We just pray that you give us wisdom and lead us and guide us, Lord. You're the great shepherd. So Lord, we want to be led. We want to be directed. And Lord, let us have the heart of shepherds who want to nurture and care for, God, those that you've put under us. Lord, tonight in your word, just let your word, it is living, it is powerful. But let all the distractions in our minds, Lord, be laid aside so that the living power of it could just take root in our minds and our thoughts and our hearts. For all those things that we don't even know how to put into words, for all those folks, Father, that, Lord, we don't even know about, Lord, we just ask you to do what only you can do, Lord. We just ask you to be who you are, and Lord, help us make space, room for you to do the extraordinary. For Miss Helen tonight, Lord, for Rachel and Lord, for just so many folk that, Lord, we haven't been able to see in a while, but Lord, we know that your hand is upon them, and Lord, they're in the palm of your hand. Father, I just thank you for these things tonight, in Jesus' name. Anything before we get started, or start looking at the exits? Good to see everybody. I debated when I saw the crowd was really, really slim, whether to continue. I guess they just miss it. I guess we'll keep moving forward unless there's something that somebody has. Thank you. Well, there are a few things that we need to accomplish for today. The men's breakfast dates have sort of been put out there, haven't they?
Yes.
So
Saturday.
It's this Saturday. Okay, I wanted to mention that again. I know we've got our meets on the 17th, September the 17th. There's a bunch of stuff that Becky's put on the calendar that are there, you know, if you're just curious as to what. If you keep a calendar, and one member of our family keeps a calendar, and if you keep a calendar, want to know kind of what's going on, what's coming, there, those things are listed there, and then we've got some on the screen. Yeah, the website.
September the 17th, which is Saturday.
It is. It's,
Afternoon.
it is, yeah. That is the weekend of Roselawn. Any of you that haven't been to Roselawn, not that I'm trying to put in a plug, but it is a lot of fun. It's beautiful. If the weather's nice, it's a lot of fun. So Roselawn is that weekend, and then we'll be doing that. I think that's also the so anybody that wants to go and have fun there, and then meet us at Scott's, and then we've got to give him a camp. Yeah. Yeah. In October. Yeah. 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 Carolyn was telling me. Yeah. Mac Powell. Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be great. Yeah.
Something like toward the middle in October.
It is.
October the 22nd,
Yeah.
which I think is probably a Thursday night.
Yeah.
October 22nd is a Saturday.
Oh, it is.
In the past, it has been like a big dinner, you know, like a banquet style thing, but I think this is the concert itself. She said the capacity was 4,000 people, so I would be shocked if there's not a lot of people there.
Yes, it's a Sunday.
So it is, we do have a handful of tickets that have been given because we sponsored Barker Regional Center, but then it's easy enough to go online and get the free tickets, you just have to get them ahead of time because you can't depend on if there'll be empty seats there, because it sounds like there's gonna be a crowd. Matt Powell's phenomenal. I know we saw him about a year ago, and we'll go in to see him in a couple of weeks. And Marietta, so it was just phenomenal.
Well, that morning on October 22nd here at the church, Sheriff Henry is doing a ladies, fall workshop. So we're going to Sheriff's next week.
And that's for the ladies. Yeah. We'll all that.
On the website, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, go to the website, Google calendar. We stopped in Exodus chapter 4, I think, and I always hesitate every week to go back and rehash, and it seems like I'm just retreading everything we talked about. But we've had some really good discussions over the last couple of weeks. Even just if you fly at 40,000 feet above this thing, just to see how God moves and works in the lives of those He calls. And that He doesn't make it easy. You know, He doesn't take the pain and the stretching part out of being obedient to Him. You know, you've heard me say that even recently a lot. That a lot of times we think if I'm in the center of God's will, that everything's just going to be easy, that it's all going to fall in place, it's all going to work out. And it's just not true, is it? There are plenty of times that you can be right in the center of His will. I do believe He provides. I do believe He will move mountains. I do believe He'll do what only He can do. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to be stretched, not only in our faith to believe, but also just stretched in other ways, you know, just in every way. And so, to me, the story of Moses being called kind of reminds you of that there are decisions we make that have huge consequences in our lives, but even in those moments when we're pig-headed and we're stubborn and we choose our own path and we get ahead of God or behind what He's wanting us to do, that God's mercy and grace is big enough to account for that, to overcome that, if you will. And that's a hopeful message, isn't it? Because I mean, none of us in this room would somehow say that we have not made mistakes like that, because we have. But I think about so many folks that I know personally, that you know personally, who are right now in the middle of that. Their decisions have just overtaken them. Bad decisions have overtaken them. You know, things are so complicated and complex in their lives, and that's a message they need to hear. Don't give up. Don't quit. Woo! I feel a little surge of energy here. Yeah, don't give up. Don't quit. Don't turn back. You know, the worst possible thing you can do would be to go in the other direction. Keep pushing. Keep pursuing. Keep pressing. I would have fainted, David said, unless I had believed to see the Lord in the land of the living. And man, I have quoted that a bunch of times in my own life. I would have fainted. I would have given up. I would have quit if I had not believed that I would experience you and see you in the land of the living. And so, man, every season changes. Every season is a season for a reason. It changes. And I'm thankful for that. So when we get to chapter 4, verse 1, which is, I think, where we stopped, because I didn't want to keep plowing along. Am I right about that? Anybody make a mark in you? Is that right? You're right. Okay. I thought that's where we stopped. I'm just going to pick up and you guys jump in. I mean, like I said, I always love the insights that you guys bring, you know, and share. Anything that I missed in that little recount of what we talked about? I mean, the complications of, you know, how much Moses knew about what his big purpose and plan was, how much he knew about, you know, that was kind of our discussion last week, was how much did he know about his story, about who his people were. He definitely knew that he belonged to the Hebrews, and no matter how many Egyptian clothes or education he got or clothes he put on, he was still a Hebrew, and he never forgot that, did he? Then Moses answered and said, "But suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say the Lord has not appeared to you." So the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" He said, "A rod." And he said, "Cast it on the ground." So he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. And man, that is a cool detail, isn't it? Again, when God is revealing, showing, you know, giving a sign, demonstrating, however you want to put it, it can be scary and overwhelming. I mean, I love the fact that there's a very uncertainty, there's an unsettledness is a better word, in this moment. As God is showing Moses, I'm going to show up. I'm going to do, you know, my part. I'm going to be with you. Have you ever felt that way, where you ask God what He wants and then He tells you and you're overwhelmed by it? I bet we all have. Where it's almost overwhelming. Moses fled from it. Verse 4, then the Lord said to Moses, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail. Take by the tail the thing that made you run." Now, you might argue that maybe what made him run was the power of God to do such a thing. You know, maybe it wasn't that he was just terrified of snakes necessarily. But he grabs it, he said, take it by the tail, and he reached out his hand and he caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they might believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. Furthermore, the Lord said to him, now put your hand in your bosom, and he put his hand in his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. And he said, put your hand in your bosom again. So he put his hand in his bosom again, and he drew it out of his bosom, and behold, it was restored like his other flesh. Then it will be, if they do not believe you, nor heed the message of the first sign, that they may believe the message of the latter sign. And it shall be, if they do not believe even those two signs, or listen to your voice, that you shall take water from the river and pour it on the dry land. The water which you take from the river will become blood on the dry land. Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent. Let's stop right there for pause for just a second. Those three signs. It's interesting, isn't it? What do you make of it? And what do you make of these three signs? Obviously, they're supernatural. Obviously, they're going to get your attention. I mean, if you're going to have some signs, those are some pretty good signs to have, aren't they? If they don't understand this one, if this doesn't move their heart, then do this. If that doesn't, then do this. Yeah.
You got to give him props for picking it back up.
Yeah. I don't necessarily, I'm asking that as a genuine question because I don't necessarily see a pattern. I was looking, because have you ever, what is the significance? You know,
They're
what?
all yucky.
Yeah,
they're
all
they're
yucky.
all
They
things
fall
that-
in the yucky
Blood
category.
and leper and
Yeah.
Something they all fear. They fear all three of them. He could have had it turned into a bunch of flowers, but he didn't. You know.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
wanted to make it known
Yeah.
that the fear is there, and he can remove the fear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, because I don't know the Egyptian mindset on snakes, but I would say they either loved them or they hated them. But it was going to get their attention, right? And God knew it was going to get their attention. But then he goes on in verse 10 to say, Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. And again, it's easy to read through 10 and miss it. I'm not eloquent of tongue before you called me, nor have I seen anything you've done so far that leads me to believe anything's different. And I never thought about that. He's not only saying, up to this point, I'm not the guy, I'm not the most eloquent person, but even then, there was no tangible difference in the way he spoke or did. It wasn't one of those moments where the light shines and suddenly he's using adjectives and phrases he's never used before. It's easy to have faith when that happens, right? It's easy to have faith if it's back to that sign where he said the sign you're going to have is that when you come back to this mountain, this series of mountains, you're going to worship me and you're going to know that everything I told you was true. You don't get the sign, you don't get the confirmation, the affirmation from it until you do what you're supposed to do. And I think it's the same thing there. You're going to find out you have the ability to speak, God-given speech, when you go do it, not before. Because, don't we all do that? Now I'm just preaching. Don't we all do that, right? If you'll give me a little taste of what you're going to do, or if you'll show me how you're going to show up and do it. And to some degree, you might argue, well, he sort of has. He said that the staff is going to become a snake, your hand is going to be leprous, and then it's going to be clean. The water is going to turn to blood. He has given him some things. But this whole thing about eloquence, about standing in front of powerful people, is Moses intimidated by powerful people when he grew up among powerful people? But he is a very different man, I would argue, in this scenario than he was even as a young whippersnapper in the house of Pharaoh. You think about when he was trained and he was in the court of Pharaoh and all this stuff, which I assume is kind of what his upbringing. It's been a while since he's been there, right? Maybe he's feeling rusty and out of practice. And he also knows he's going back to the place where, would the rumors of him still be there? I know leadership has changed, but would the stories still be told about he's a murderer, this guy, or would they even know him? Gene, what were you going to say?
I was thinking back on the serpent and the leprosy and the blood. Surely the stories were passed down how the serpent beguiled Eve and Adam in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that they would all, I would think, try to stay away from because of the deceitfulness of it.
Yeah.
And then the leprosy, I think God is showing himself that he has power over the serpent. with leprosy, he has power over the sickness or disease. And then, of course, they all knew they had to kill these animals for blood, for the atonement for their sins. God had power over the blood as well. I mean, it's just a thought that come into my head.
Yeah.
You know, from the time this is,
Yeah.
all the sacrifices that they had to do
Yeah.
just to say, Lord, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's God showing, I'm over the serpent, I'm over the illness
Yeah.
and the disease, and I am
Yeah.
the supplier of the blood.
Yeah.
And this is also an exercise in faith and obedience, you know, because I think, at least for me, there have been times when I felt like God was calling me to do something and I didn't think I was the most qualified to do it. I didn't want to step out and to do that, you know, and you had to make a conscious decision that says, I believe he's asking me for a purpose and I'm going to do what he's going to ask me. So this gives us a little insight of Moses saying, you know, I'm not the best speaker. If you're looking for an elocution expert, you need to find somebody else. And it wasn't about that. It was about believing that God was going to be there with him to say what needed to be said when it said, and he had to be obedient to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true.
Well, I think it shows too, like, God just meets you where you are, like, he's not trying to change that quality about Moses, like, he's not trying to change Moses, like the fact that he's slow in speech, like, he's gonna use Moses exactly the way he is, so that Moses and everybody else knows it's not Moses, but,
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
like to think about having a conversation with God. I just say, you got it. What's my orders here?
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean,
He's talking to God.
talking to, yeah, that's true. This is not
You know?
third-handed, fourth-handed
Yeah, he's not having a
conversation.
dream, he's talking to God.
Yeah, true. True.
So we don't even know if the Israelites believe God.
You mean as he goes back with their
Now,
state of mind?
God says they're mine,
Yeah.
right? They're my people.
Yeah.
They've been there 430 years. And the only evidence they have of God is from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's no temple, there's no law, there's nothing. And they've been there that long. And I don't even know if historically there's any record where God showed up in Egypt and talked to anybody.
Yeah.
So this is first.
Yeah.
He's fixing to introduce himself to the nation he created. As a nation. It's never happened before until now. He's spoken to people and groups of people connected to that person, but never a nation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Also, it seems like if a rocket scientist comes down and tries to talk to me, I may not understand what they're trying to tell me, but if Moses comes and he's a little bit slower, and so am I, maybe I get it.
He's
You
breaking.
know, I mean, not everybody can carry a message
Yeah.
to everybody.
There you go.
But you gotta be able to speak your language and know your audience, basically.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
I would hate to get down to verse 14, then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's coming, because he said, but God,
Mhm.
are you sure?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
the Lord's anger burned against Moses.
Yeah. Well, you wonder, I mean, is it genuinely, he's shaken to the core that he's not up to the task, or is there a bit of false humility? I don't think there's false humility. You know, you ever, oh shucks, I don't know. I don't really think it's that. I think he's
That's not that.
shaken to the core that he really does doubt whether or not, you know, he's the guy at this point in his life.
I would question God too. If you ask me, I'd be like, say, what?
Yeah. Well, somebody said,
He's 80 years old.
yeah.
And he probably just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. Just, I mean, it's upsetting to your whole life,
Yeah, I
really.
mean, you got a lot of maid servants and
Yeah.
wives,
Yeah.
flocks.
Yeah.
He's gotta walk.
He's kinda there right now, he's entering into retirement.
Absolutely.
And he's gotta walk all the way back across the desert.
Yeah. But you are right, and that's sort of what I was hinting at a minute ago. He's not the man he was when he left Egypt, zealous and ready to do justice and all that stuff. He's made a life for himself, hasn't he, with the with Raul and the family, and I mean, he's had kids, he's flocks, like you said. It appears pretty successful at this point. Yeah, you do wonder if it's just like, Lord, even thinking about doing what you're telling me to do wears me out. You know, that gives me a little hope and encouragement there. So the Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth, or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you shall say. I will give you the physical ability to do it, and I will put the words there. But he said, "O my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send." And this is what Cheryl was referring to. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well, and look, he is also coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart." Again, there's a lot going on right there. One little phrase there. Because you've got to consider that he's preparing Aaron to be a part of this whole venture too, right? I mean, he's frustrated. And again, I mean, that's just interesting stuff to me, that God, if he's angry, the Lord is angry. His anger is kindled against Moses because of Moses' lack of faith, lack of willingness, whatever the right word is. And then he says, okay.
He's
Aaron.
angry here.
Yeah,
In a little while, he's gonna try to kill him.
yeah, yeah.
So when he meets God, who's going to deliver Israel,
Yeah.
he meets God. Everything about him, when his boy Gershom is in circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that a minute ago as well.
So what I'm saying is, the cool thing about this is Moses is Moses, and God is God.
Yeah.
And neither one of them, like you said, say platitudes, nobody's patting each other on the back. It's a genuine deal. Like when he said, "Who made man's mouth to mute the blind?" You know, they do what they do, even though they are like they are. You're going to do what you're going to do, even though you're like you are. And I'll grant you this concession. I'll give this.
Yeah.
And he did.
But it's interesting to me that phrase there at the end of 14 where he says, "And when he," talking about his brother Aaron, "when he sees you, he will be glad at his heart." And I am thankful for that kind of grace that God exerts. Not only, like you said, the concession of giving Moses, Aaron to kind of be his right-hand man and speak, you know,
Well,
also.
probably thinks he's dead.
Aaron thinks Moses is
He ain't seen
dead.
him before you.
Yeah. So that when he sees him, yeah, I thought
He
about
probably
it.
thinks, I don't know that any word got shipped back.
Yeah,
He probably thinks he's dead, and
yeah.
we don't even know the backstory, how God got his attention to go, "Hey, I'm gonna send you to go see Moses, this is where it's at." That's all God too.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought about it till you said that. I was trying to think geographically, like where he's at this point. I assume he's still in Midian, isn't he? Moses is still there. So Aaron has come to Midian. And like you're saying, we don't know if he had done that before, if this is a meeting.
This is still all the bush
The
conversation.
union.
This is still all the burning bush
Is he
conversation.
still at the bush?
And
Yeah. Yeah.
This is,
Um,
I am that I am.
yeah.
Yeah, he's been for a while.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is all,
I hadn't thought about that part.
this is all still the same meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I hadn't even thought about that in context.
But you
Yeah.
think about all this dudes had to digest.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But I love the fact that he's already worked in Aaron's heart to be willing to be a part of the plan. I mean, he's going to see, and there may be, Victor, that is some support for the idea that they have when he says in 14, when he says, when he sees you, he'll be glad in his heart. It may very well be just overseeing his brother. I was thinking of that in terms of he'll be glad, I'll do something in his heart, and when he realizes his part of the plan, then he'll be happy about it, but it may very well just be he'll be glad to see you. 15, now you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And again, that's interesting. God has already said, I'll put the words in your mouth. And then he's saying, you put the words in Aaron's mouth. In other words, you tell him what to say. And I'll be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you what you shall do. So he shall be your spokesman to the people, and he himself shall be as a mouth for you, and you shall be to him as God. And that's an interesting statement. Let's see if we can get it. Yeah, revealer.
Speaker.
Yeah. I've got a capital G there. Is it?
It is,
Yeah.
he's talking about the content,
Mhm. Yeah.
not blowing in the dark.
Right. And you shall take this rod in your hand with which you shall do the signs. So Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go and return to my brethren who are in Egypt and see whether they are still alive, And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. And again, you know, talking about God working in situations, again, he's working in Aaron's heart, for Aaron to be the right hand man. He's working in Jethro's heart, you know, for him to get his blessing for. And again, you know, I understand it's somewhat of a cultural thing here, but even the fact that he's asking of his father-in-law, not permission, but in a way he is, and that you're, you know, the authority that his father-in-law kind of has over him there, he's sort of asking, I wouldn't call it a blessing necessarily, but he is wanting him to be okay with it, because he is married to his daughter. I mean, those grandbabies are his grandbabies. Those Moses' babies are his grandbabies. Go in peace, he said. So verse 19, now the Lord said to Moses and Midian, go return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. Then Moses took his wife and his sons, and he set them on a donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand, and I love that. Man, that's a whole sermon right there. The rod that he had put on the ground, that he picked back up, that rod in the hand of the rod of God. And you don't ever want to go to do God's work without having the rod of God in your hand, especially if he gave you one. You put a stick in your hand. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I've put in your hand. But I'll harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed, I will kill your son, your firstborn. That is not going to make you popular, is it? If that's the message you're bringing. God said Israel is his son. You know, let him go. And if you don't, he's going to kill your firstborn. No wonder Moses didn't want to go say some of this stuff. Do you think he had any inkling as to some of the hard things he was going to be asked to say?
So he whispered this to.
Yeah, there. Yeah. And then step back. Took 3 steps back. Yeah. And again, I mean, man, everybody wants the easy job, don't they? I mean, the thing that's going to get you a lot of glory with not a whole lot of cost. But man, when it comes to potentially getting your neck in the guillotine, ain't nobody running to that job, are they? And I mean, Moses is being put in a position. He's going to see God's hand work as nobody else is in a position to see it. But at the same time, he's going to also experience the ire and anger of.
And at the beginning, he reveals the last thing.
What do you mean?
All the other plagues are going to happen before that.
Oh, about killing his son? Yeah, true.
So he reveals the end result.
Yeah, he does.
What, you know, so he knows, whatever goes down, you're going to have to use those over your son's time.
Yeah.
He knows it right off the get-go.
And of course, we don't know, but you do wonder the degree to which Pharaoh took that seriously, right? Because I mean, somebody starts talking about your kid. I mean, that gets your attention. If there's a mom and a daddy, that get your attention in a hurry. But there's also, you wonder, when he talks about the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, and we sort of dealt with that, but there's also a sense, anyone in authority and power, when you challenge that authority and power, and this is a direct challenge against it, isn't it? Look, you think you're the boss, but you're either going to let them go or you're going to wish you hadn't let them go. And that right there, for a powerful person who's clutching the power, that is like the kiss of death. And, oh yeah, just wait and see. Watch and see if I do. It came to pass on the way, and this is what Victor was talking about, at the encampment, that the Lord met him, talking about Moses, and he sought to kill him. Again, that verse there, man, is just off the chain. He sought to kill him. And verse 25, Moses fixed the whole situation, and God was happy. No, that's not what it said, was it? No. Then Zipporah, his wife, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son, and cast it at Moses' feet, and said, surely you are a husband of blood to me. So he let him go. Then she said, you are a husband of blood because of the circumcision. And the Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. What do you man, that whole thing, I mean, good gracious. Yeah.
It's he knows he's a Hebrew.
Yeah.
His boy's more than 8 days old.
Mm-hmm. He's totally neglected to do the thing he was supposed to do.
I've not found anyone in the scripture where God called the gave a task that they were righteous before him.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
So this is undealt with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't understand, y'all have to go over it with me then.
Yeah.
Abraham started.
Yeah.
God started circumcision with Abraham.
Yeah.
We've had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We've had 430 years,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a son.
Who is the son?
Moses.
Okay.
Gershon.
I need to step by step.
And he has a son.
Yeah.
And and he's going to do what God asked him to do,
But he never, yeah,
and this is left undone.
yeah, never circumcised his kids.
All right.
So Zipporah is Hebrew, so she knows all that?
No.
See, that's.
No, to me, that's the tension here. This is the daughter of Jethro, the Midianite. To me, that's the tension here. It seems like to me she has disdain for this whole practice, doesn't she? I mean, isn't that what she's saying? You're a man of blood. I can't believe you did it. But the flip, interesting part to me is that she's the one that does it. It doesn't say that Moses realizes the error of his way and goes and, does what he was supposed to have done initially. It's Zipporah that does it as a way really of saving Moses' life. I mean, that's hard to put in context to figure that one out.
This could have been a tension between them for years.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think that's true. I think it probably was.
And how would she know that was a remedy?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Since she touched Moses' feet, the gut was on
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Traditionally,
yeah,
But she knows that's the remedy
yeah,
by her actions.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point about that. May have been a point of contention. It seemed odd and weird to her and never got done. But she's willing to do it in that moment. And it may just be she recognizes the power of God, or maybe, in trying to save her own husband. I don't know.
And when she says
She's angry with him.
bridegroom of blood, is she being sarcastic? Is she being,
She's being a hero.
okay?
No, I think she looks at it as a bloody practice, like an unnecessary bloody practice. And
Like
you think
she's
about it.
frustrated about it.
Yeah, it's like, and that would lend you to believe that there has been contention between them about this issue. That she's angry about the fact that this, but at the same time, she's encountering a God that is, you can't just whistle it past the graveyard. You can't just act like he's not there. I mean, he's appeared, and he's angry and going to kill Moses, it says.
But clearly the Lord would have had to move them there because, to do that, or she would have she wouldn't have had to have done it if her people didn't believe that way.
Yeah, but, I think she knew Moses was going to be killed. I think, maybe she did it out of affection and love for him.
I think it's just a good picture of a husband and wife. Husband needs a man. I mean, husband needs a wife. Godly wife.
Yeah.
Over here, coming over.
She's doing something.
Obedient.
See, yeah.
And what about, does it have anything to do with when they say, I'll slay your son, even your firstborn? Is she protecting her son by making him right? By being circumcised so that he can't be?
I don't know if she's privy to that
Yeah,
conversation.
that's an interesting thought, though. I had not even considered
It's
that.
sort of right in the same
Yeah.
area, so is she protecting both of them?
Yeah, it's like Victor
Or-
said, I'm not sure that how much she knew about that, but that is that's a neat twist, though.
Did
Very
she know
popular.
what they were going to do to confront Pharaoh and what?
We don't know. do
They
we?
probably didn't discuss it.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Just saying.
She's fixed to leave when she lived her whole life, and he's like, come on, go do something about it. No.
All right, thank you, that helped me a little bit.
Well, everything about this is baffling. It don't matter how many times you look, how many times I've read this. There's a nature.
There would have had to been knowledge some point in their conversation,
I would agree.
Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, he knows.
Yeah.
There had to been a conversation somehow or another, boom. And if this guy, this Midian, priest of Midian fellow, has to have some kind of knowledge, somewhat, of, being the priest in the area of God.
Mhm.
What was it said last time that when somebody looked it up?
Yeah.
So when we have this story and she performs the remedy, she has to know that.
Yeah. For sure. I agree.
Now, whether out of fear or whatever, but in
Yeah.
this moment before God, she knows. And when she does what she does, that's a leap between them two.
Yeah, I'm with Dave on that. The fact that she throws the foreskin at his feet and says, "You're a man of blood. This is blood. This is She doesn't make any indictment against God, does she? Or she doesn't. He's God.
But she also knows that about her husband for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
This time,
Yeah.
she has to go that way.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. We preach God, we preach Jesus, but Jesus really plain. Let's just read through John. If you don't believe that I'm He, you'll die in your sins. I mean, he doesn't fix it.
Right.
God doesn't fix that requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what's hard for us to wrap our brain around is the fact that he has just put Moses on a divine mission, and yet Scripture is saying he was ready to kill him because of disobedience. You know, because of and not even a blatant. I guess you could argue it's blatant disobedience, but I always thought of even almost as an oversight. You know, you're living in a different land with different whatevers, and you forget what fidelity to God looks like.
And is that disobedience?
Yeah, if you don't, yeah.
Doesn't matter how long it is.
Yeah, 40 years doesn't matter. Scott, what was you say?
Many of the commentaries out here from Matthew Henry on, there's a bunch of them out here, all pretty much said the same thing, that Moses fell ill and he was getting sicker and sicker, and it was because of his disobedience. She knew about it, circumcised him. Moses was healed from his illness, and she was mad at him because she had to do that to her son to save him.
I've never heard that. That's interesting.
So the term killed there. It doesn't necessarily mean so.
You think that's where they're getting that whole idea about him being ill?
They were saying the word actually means deathly ill.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's a big difference in it. From the
So
whole
I think he was
mindset.
down and out.
Yeah.
And they weren't going any further because they had come to a place to rest, you know. And so he couldn't go any further. He wasn't going to make it unless something happened, and it was.
So
But
she's.
then it does say, so the Lord let him alone.
Yeah.
Like after she does that and throws it at his feet, so the Lord let him alone.
Let him go. Yeah.
I don't think ignorance is excused,
Yeah. No.
you know?
Well, I think about when Paul said, you know, these times of ignorance God has winked at, but now, in light of Jesus, calls everybody to repentance. And I agree with you in the sense, I think we're accountable for the things we know. I think that's kind of what you're saying, Vicki, is that we're accountable for things. Ignorance
That.
of
We know
something.
better, and
Once
we
you-
choose not to,
Yeah.
sorry, that's not
Yeah.
excused.
Yeah. Look at 27. The Lord said to Aaron, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moses." So, I mean, where did Aaron go? That I know it, yeah.
On the way, and it met on the way.
Yeah. And the Lord said to Aaron, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moses." So he went and met with him on the mountain of God and kissed him.
So he was already in the town.
In town.
He was in.
One of the
in
things that
city.
biblical writers, we all know that they do, is that they don't necessarily feel the need to stay linear with the story, and they to backtrack and to like give you different perspectives, you know, and they don't necessarily tell you, hey, we're giving you a different. So I wonder if when it says that Aaron saw him and his heart was, you know, he felt good about it, that this was the encounter here. I mean, I don't know if this is a second encounter or if it's a description of the previous encounter. But they meet on the mountain of God and he kisses him. So Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs which he had commanded him. Can you imagine that conversation between these two brothers who've been separated?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so did the circumcision take place, wasn't he already on the mountain? And all this, and then he comes down to the mountain?
No, I
That
think-
happened, and then they went back to the mountain for Aaron to meet him?
No, I think he was on the way to Egypt, wasn't he? Wasn't he on the move?
That's what I thought, but it just says go into the wilderness to meet Moses, so he met him at the mountain of God. and
Yeah.
kissed him.
24, and it came to pass on the way at the encampment that the Lord met him and sought to kill him.
So this is a different mountain.
No,
I'm so confused, I'm sorry.
No, it's not.
the area is big.
Yeah. Not sure encampment, does anybody else have a different word there?
In,
Oh, is it? It
Yep.
says in? Oh, wow. Okay. On the way at the encampment, at the end, the Lord met him and sought to kill him. So the Lord took a sharp stone, cut off the foreskin, cast it at Moses' feet. I just imagine these two brothers as they meet. And again, if there's been an extended period, we don't know whether they've had contact over these years or not. But when they meet, can you imagine that conversation where Moses is saying, "Yo, dude, I got some things to tell you. We are in for the ride of our lives, and let me show." I mean, because it seems to me when he says, 28, Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs. Now, I can't imagine he's holding the rod of God in his hand, and he knows what can happen, and he's going to just say, he's going to just give. I'm wondering, does Moses stick his hand in there and say, "Look at this"? You know, I mean, if he gives him one of those, or if it's more of just a, I mean, you know, we don't know, it's just
Never knew.
interesting, yeah, who knows?
Can we go back to the circumcision thing for a second?
Yeah.
Because David's thing says, why did Zipporah perform the circumcision? It may have been Zipporah who, as a Midianite, unfamiliar with the circumcision requirement, had persuaded Moses not to circumcise her son.
That's,
If she prevented the action, now she would have to perform it. It is also possible that Moses became ill as a result of performing disobedience. And so Zipporah had performed the circumcision because Moses was ill, to save both her husband and son. This would not have made her happy, hence her unflattering comment to Moses.
yeah. And that's what you were saying about sparing the kids' life. I was thinking
Yeah.
more in terms of Moses' life, but he, I mean, may very well have been, let's say, the version too. Yeah.
His name is still on Steve.
Yeah. He's angry with their disobedience.
That relieved the problem. Circumcision relieved that, the reason God was, the reason he was sick.
We go back to that whole thing when God reveals himself and says, you know, obedience is better than sacrifice. You know, he's talking to the, you know, I mean, that was not to Moses, that was a different context, but I'm saying that's the mind of God. Obedience is better than sacrifice.
And the next thing you know from God doesn't erase the first thing you're supposed to know.
Yes, that's true.
Doesn't trump it, you don't wipe it out of the way, God won't forget.
Right. That's right. 28, Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord who had sent him and all the signs which he had commanded him. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. So again, this whole idea that they go and gather, whether they go bring them out to a place to an encampment.
Didn't tell you they traveled.
Yeah.
They're there.
They're there. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. Then he did the signs in the sight of the people. It's interesting. Aaron, it appears, does the signs, right? You know that? And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. Then he did the signs in the sight of the Lord. Whether, I don't know whether the he is Moses or Aaron.
I think
Moses.
it's Aaron because.
Moses was the one, it looks like in this context that it's Aaron, but Moses was the one, Fletch, I agree, was the one that was given the ability to do the signs.
Mine reads a little bit different though. It says that Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people.
Yeah.
So it's saying he spoke.
Aaron
and
did
the
those,
signs.
yeah.
It uses the word also.
Yeah,
Also,
Ah.
additional.
Yeah.
that's what mine said.
He did the signs in the sight of the people. I think it's interesting too that he goes, you know, to the elders and gathers them first. I mean, because you've got to win the very people you're coming to deliver before you really confront Pharaoh anyway, don't you? So the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel and that he had spoken, that he had looked on their affliction, then they bowed their heads and they worshiped. When they found out that God hadn't forgotten. That seems like, verse 31, like a new message to them, and it's not something that they've been rehearsing, talking about. Think about when you were talking about the condition of their understanding of, was there any relation to God? It appears here, this is new revelation to them, that God
All they have
cares.
is a story.
Yeah.
God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
And those stories, that's all they have.
Yeah.
Until now.
Yeah, until
Until
this
this.
fresh word. Yeah.
That's right.
And they looked in their affliction and then they bowed their heads. I guess, can you keep going? Verse 1, afterward Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. So they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the desert and sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with sword. Now that whole conversation to me is just incredible. It's baffling and interesting. He's not saying at this point, he's not saying let us go so God doesn't strike you. Yeah, is he? He's saying so that bad things don't happen to us because we're not being obedient to this God. And he's asking for a 3-day. Is Moses only intended to go 3 days away, to take the people 3 days out? I mean, no. Remember, because eventually when Pharaoh gives them permission to go, remember just like go, Pharaoh doesn't respond until he recognizes that the people aren't coming back. You know, he doesn't start chasing them immediately. Once he realizes the 3-day, go 3 days away is just a ruse, like they're not coming back, that's when he sends men to start to chase them. And that's when they arrive at the Red Sea. Then the king of Egypt said to them, the king of Egypt, it's interesting, isn't it, how the phraseology changes there. Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people from their work? Get back to your labor. And Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are many now, and you make them rest from their labor. So the same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, you shall no longer give the people straw to make brick as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And you shall lay on them the quota of bricks which they made before. You shall not reduce it. For they are idle. Therefore they cry out, saying, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let more work be laid on the men, that they may labor in it, and let them not regard false words. And the taskmasters of the people and their officers went out and spoke to the people, saying, thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go get yourself straw where you can find it. Yet none of your work will be reduced. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. And of course we all kind of know, God's initial word through Moses makes life a lot harder than it doesn't. I mean, God will test your resolve sometimes warning about things he said. I mean, what God has told the people through Moses is, I've heard your cry and I've come to do something about it. You're going to leave. But when they ask to leave, when Moses approaches Pharaoh, then things get worse. Have you ever had a situation, you don't have to tell us about it, but have you ever had a situation where things got worse when you started doing the right thing? Absolutely. I mean, the right thing is going to cost you a lot of times. And this definitely here is costing them, isn't it? I mean, this is hard. So now, instead of having the materials given to them to meet the quota, they're having to, it says all over Egypt. So you can imagine, and when you think about it, that's a pretty smart tactic on the part of Pharaoh. And he's using this idea, well, if you've got that much free time, then hey, I'll just, then they're give you more work. Now you'll get your own stuff. But think about the divisive nature of that. Think about how that divides the Hebrews. Because now the Hebrews who are scattered abroad looking and the task is made harder, who are they going to blame for that? Blame Moses, aren't they? I mean, I wouldn't you? Things were bad enough, and now Moses has gotten your hopes up. He's gone to Pharaoh and declared these huge words, and then now life got a lot harder for you. So I'm saying there's an element in which politically, this is a pretty smart move on Pharaoh's part. I'm gonna make you all mad at him, because then you'll realize you, to some degree, you got it made here, like you had it better before Moses got it. Yeah, that's exactly right. This, what we're seeing today in our country and really across the world, but particularly in our country, is nothing new. I mean, leaders have always known that's the way you do. You divide the people so that there can't be any cohesion. There can't be real unity. And that's exactly what he's doing here. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
It
right.
works. Absolutely works. Yeah.
You know, as a child, you read this, and you're automatically on Moses' side. You can't identify with Pharaoh because you think you're Moses, not Pharaoh.
Yeah.
But the real deal is, he's at a crossover right there.
Yeah.
It's a matter of faith.
Yeah.
But Moses was a messenger from God, and it was just a matter of faith that he didn't see the dream. And of course, it affected the pocketbook and the money and all.
Yeah.
But and then as we read on, as he steps out, tries it, then changes his mind. He represents us more. I might be more represented by Pharaoh than Moses.
Than Moses, yeah.
And
Yeah.
in different
Yeah.
parts of our lives.
Yeah.
He made a true statement, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a-
and also the children of Israel were not living the law and obedient,
Yeah.
and celebrating the Sabbath. And, they're chosen people, but I don't know, they didn't have this thing going on yet.
Yeah.
They didn't have the law yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maureen, I was just thinking the fact that like they didn't have anything, and like there was no corporate gatherings where they may have heard these stories, like it was up to your individual families to kind of pass it down. So if you're an Israelite and you don't know any of these stories, you're probably still like, yeah, like we'll follow this Lord because we're not gonna have to do this work anymore and we go in somewhere else. So like they may not even have really fully understood even what they were doing when they're like, yeah, let's leave.
Yeah.
Like you go and we'll leave because they're just trying to get out of being slaves.
Yeah, but it also, the lack of depth in the relationship or understanding of God also explains why they're so quick to want to turn back.
Right.
To why, well, gosh, we had it better back there. You know, why'd you bring us out here to experience this? We had it better back there. There's a lot of psychological study going on here, and I mean, if you want to break the psychology part of this down, this is from how leaders respond to challenges against their power. Because I do agree with you totally, Dave. I think Pharaoh, and this is back to the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. When you're given that kind of decisive moment and you choose your own arrogance and your own pride, the very same thing that caused Lucifer to fall, pride. When you choose pride in that situation right there, there is a sense in which your heart begins to harden. You know, not only I'm not acquainted with this God, I'm not going to give this God a chance to demonstrate his power. Little does he know that God's going to demonstrate his power through the plagues, whether he knows, he doesn't know it at this point, but he's fixing to get a big dose.
There's a lot of deep stuff here, because as we get the plague, the first half, says Pharaoh hardened his heart, and then the next half, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. That's deep there,
Yeah, oh yeah,
you know?
yeah, no, absolutely, true. You go say something, Chris?
Well, he doesn't know. The only concept he knows about God is something chiseled out of stone.
Yeah.
And somebody gives characteristics to it.
Yeah,
You've never seen that like that.
yeah.
So when God, the cool thing is when God shows up, he shows up. And everyone people have to go through to understand the him, they're gonna go through.
Mhm.
And he doesn't take any of that away.
Mhm.
If the Israelites are supposed to know him and they don't, and they're 4 generations away from really knowing who he is, he doesn't even take that into consideration. This is who I am. Oh,
Yeah,
when he comes on the scene, he comes on fully God. He
Yeah.
doesn't
yeah.
trickle, it's not a trickle down.
Yeah, like Tony Evans says, he didn't come to take sides, he came to take over.
Yes, right.
Yeah, he comes to take over. The taskmasters forced him to hurry, verse 13, saying, fulfill your work, your daily quota, as when there was straw. Also the officers of the children of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not fulfilled your task in making brick, both yesterday and today, as before? Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, why are you dealing thus with your servants? There is no straw given to your servants. And they say to us, make brick. And indeed your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, you're idle, idle. Therefore you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Therefore go now and work, for no straw will be given you, yet you shall deliver the quota of bricks. The interesting part again about that is all of the Egyptian king, their whole empire has been built on the backs of slaves, and particularly this particular king has been built on the backs of the Hebrew slaves. Isn't it? So you think about when they come there, I don't necessarily think they're given a sense of false humility to him, like, lo, we're your servants. I think they understand we've been building we've been building this empire. We've been building these structures, that we still have, that we still see. We're the ones that have built these things for you. They are slaves. And the officers of the children of Israel saw that they were in trouble after it was said, you shall not reduce any bricks from your daily quota. Then as they came out from Pharaoh, they met Moses and Aaron, who stood there to meet them. They met Moses and Aaron, who stood there to meet them. Now you think about it. What's the uncomfortable nature of that encounter?
Mine said stood in the way.
Stood in the way. Yeah. Think about it. I mean, they've just been in there to some degree. I mean, have they just thrown Moses and Aaron under the bus in a sense? Like, hey, all these ideas and notions and whatever, and all the repercussions that it's created for us, life is hard for us. We didn't, they're not something, we didn't ask for that. We didn't.
When Moses is there, the first time we go in to talk to Pharaoh, chapter 5, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. Who is the Lord? I don't know. And they said, the God of the Hebrews have met with us.
Mm-hmm.
term Hebrew means not from here.
Yeah.
Jesus said, how many million people think they're from there?
Yeah.
God reminded him, you know, this is not where you're from.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is something that happened to you that I saw is gonna happen, but you're not from here.
Yeah.
And so everything that God is doing for these Egyptian people, is letting them know, everything that's happened to you, he ain't gonna find it here. It don't even originate from here.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
Those people, and he calls them my firstborn son. It changes the whole dynamic. They don't know that about themselves.
Yeah.
He has a reminder.
Yeah.
He tells them.
Yeah.
That's like somebody coming to Jesus for the first time, right? And they really
Yeah.
figure out that God loves them. They didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no clue. We should have. We didn't.
But you're right. He's also asking the Egyptians to look at the Hebrews in a different way too.
Right.
So he's requiring a lot of.
He demands it.
Yeah, demands it. So they met Moses and Aaron, who stood there, or stood in their way to meet them. And they said to them, "Let the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us." So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people at all." Yeah. So, you
Looking
know,
for a quick fix one.
yeah, the leaders that have gone in and have had this conversation with Pharaoh and sort of throwing it at Moses and Aaron, right? And in turn, Moses turned to him. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's going to be harder than you think it's going to be. You know, there is some real encouragement here. For sometimes you go through things that you are aware are going to be difficult, hard, and when you're in the middle of them, they feel even harder than you thought they would be. And you got to keep on believing, and you got to keep on holding on.
Well, it's like you said. It's just like you said earlier. Only thing God told him, I'm gonna give you the ability to do three things. Well, in his brain, he doesn't know all the rest of it.
Right.
He's gonna go in and do three things, and Pharaoh's gonna go, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, see ya. Good thing you did.
Yeah.
God doesn't show it all to you.
No.
I mean, I don't know what he called it, whatever. All he knows is what God told him to do, but, you know, if God tells you to do something and you do it, and then you think that's the end all, you go back to God and say, well, you hadn't done anything. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I did 3 signs.
Yeah.
I'm priming the pump here. This thing's, it's gonna be like I told you.
Yeah.
He just doesn't know all the middle stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's also gonna set up the Israelites, because if they didn't have a full understanding of who God is, you know, he's gonna show them his power to build their faith in him. I mean, just like as a new Christian, you can say all day long, hey, you can be in the middle of a storm and be at God's will. That doesn't really resonate with them, because they don't know better. Like that statement comes from a place of maturity, where you've been through that. Like, they're not gonna understand that. And the Israelites, they don't understand. That's why they're burning on Moses. Like, why have you done this? Because they don't understand.
And think about it from Moses' perspective. The very people that he intended to help, he has now been the instrument of hurt. That's a heavy thing to bear.
In their mind.
Yeah, in their minds. Yeah, absolutely. Well, in his mind too, because he's brazen enough to turn back to God and say, I thought you sent me to help your people get out of here, and yet the help I thought I was bringing has been hurting. Now, you think about the level of discouragement that could come to a person that's trying to do the will of God, because that was the very thing that got him in trouble in his youth in Egypt, wasn't it? Is, I want justice now, I'm going to do this, and he kills the person. You know, he shortchanges the process, and then all of a sudden, here he is later. The very same things happen for different reasons. He did it his way the first time, and now he's doing it God's way. And from the surface, it doesn't look a whole lot better, does it? The people he was sent to help, and his heart goes out for, are the very people that he's hurt.
That's why no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
He makes an accurate statement there. He says something accurate. You've not rescued the people at all.
Yeah.
And they haven't been yet.
Right. Yeah, that's true. For
So
sure.
I think that maybe sometimes we read in, that's like the same thing with Adam and Eve, you know, the woman you gave. I hear people preach that all the time, like this guy has reference
Mhm.
of a male ego in such a way that he can talk about a woman like that. He don't even know. He's barely been alive. He just started not being dust. I mean, he don't have all that.
Yeah.
He just tells what he knows. Well,
Yeah.
this is what happened. I don't know if he's going in front of God. He doesn't even know God well enough to act in front of him. Now,
Yeah.
he just said, hey, trouble's happened. Did you not rescue these people?
Yeah.
We don't see God getting hot with it.
Right. Where were you when I made the?
Yeah, he didn't.
Yeah.
But sometimes the Lord's gotta break you so you can go to that better. First one,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
then the Lord said to Moses, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh because of my mighty hand, you will let him go because of my mighty hand,
Yeah.
you will trouble my country.
Yeah. But the interesting part is there's no arrogance. It doesn't. I mean, you could argue it's arrogance on Moses' part to talk to God that way, although I don't think it is. But Moses isn't claiming somehow that, I mean, any idea that he thought he was the one that was going to deliver him anyway. I mean, he thought he was going to be the hand of God used. But like you said, it's almost the accusation is God, you know, where you at? I thought you sent me to do this.
I think we read accusations.
Yeah.
I don't pick it up that way. I pick it up that he's talking to God, we talk to him.
He's just stating
Saying,
fact.
hey, trouble's come, and you hadn't rescued him yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know his demeanor, but I
Yeah.
doubt he rolled up in front of God that he really doesn't know. That he just got delivered from, that he was dying from a sickness. Now he's gonna go get in his face. I don't think that's it.
Mhm.
I think he's stating an accurate truth.
Yeah.
And then God goes, all right, then he will let it go. My mighty hand, not just the things I told you to do, but my mighty hand, he'll let it.
I think that's a good place to stop if you guys are cool with that. There's a lot of every. Yeah. Yeah. Let's close with prayer and thanksgiving. Lord, thank you. Thank you for who you are and the way you are determined to reveal yourself to mankind, to us. For the way you do it in your own way, in your own time. Yeah.
It's just stuff from Jacob. I feel my same thing realizes from Jacob with God Almighty, that as the Lord is,
Yeah.
this whole concept over here.
Yeah.
I am.
So in other words,
you.
I'm giving you something I didn't even give them. Is that what you're saying? Like, I'm giving them an opportunity to know me and parts of me that not even patriarchs.
That's gonna be the order of the nation.
Yeah.
And done it.
Yeah. Good to see everybody. Love you guys. We'll start seeing everybody Sunday. Do we want to talk about okay. Yeah, well, I keep throwing out the idea. I know I keep having people ask me about the dinners. When do the dinners start back? Were we in agreement last week? Becky says we took a vote on it. I don't remember taking a vote. Did we vote? Okay. She's usually right, so it's never a good thing for me to argue when it comes to memory stuff. She says we did, so we're in agreement that we want the food to start back.